hero's someone who doesn't give up, though. And I don't plan to. I don't know, man. I can't talk about me without talking about Spider-Man.
Sure you can. You just have to... Yeah, why don't you just start another draft?
There's more to Marvel games than simply Spider-Man, my friends, and today, we're gonna be talking about them. But regardless, welcome back, true believers and all you spectacular Spidey fans, and merry Marvelites out there, to a very exciting Marvel games related video, where in this topic, we are going to be discussing the most excited games that I'm personally looking forward to within a top 5 list, because as you should know, there are way more than 5 Marvel games that are currently set to be released, which we are officially aware of. Like, for example, we all know that more than likely Marvel's Spider-Man 3 is somewhere in development within Insomniac Games' production pipeline, and no doubt that if that game was to be officially announced right now with a solid release date, that would be number 1 on the list, no questions asked. But in this video, I mainly wanted to highlight and give some credit to some of the other upcoming Marvel games which we are fully aware of, and give them their time to shine. Because even though a lot of these projects, as it stands right now, we don't necessarily have too much information about what the gameplay might end up feeling like. We haven't even seen certain trailers or gameplay trailers for some of these titles, but there is still a lot to be excited for given the direction that the company is going in for these respective Marvel characters within their own standalone AAA titles, what exactly each team is bringing to the table, and just how great of a time it is to be a fan of superhero video games within the Marvel landscape. Sadly, DC is kind of not doing too great given the lackluster performance of Suicide Squad, but hopefully the Wonder Woman game might be able to turn things around, and maybe they have some other cool secret projects in the works which we don't know about yet officially as it stands right now. But of course, we're mainly talking about Marvel in this video and all these other Marvel games that I think you and I should definitely look forward to in the future. So if you're excited to dive into all these Marvel games with me and stay tuned for even more Marvel games related videos down the line, then definitely be sure to whip that like button and subscribe to the channel for even more Marvel games videos in the future. And if a certain Marvel game that you're looking forward to doesn't happen to be appearing on this list whatsoever, that doesn't mean that I'm not excited for it. It just means that these are my main top 5 that I am the most excited for within the current Marvel games production pipeline. Now, to kick things off with number 5 is that we do have Marvel's Black Panther, which, to reiterate, is a fully brand new single-player, third-person, action-adventure, standalone AAA title for the one and only King of Wakanda. And speaking of Wakanda, is that it has already been previously confirmed within job listings, is that this game is going to be set in a fully open world explorable Wakanda setting. And on top of that is that this entire game is currently in development with the usage of Unreal Engine 5. But what I find even more interesting about this game is that even though Electronic Arts will be the one publishing this title, we do know that a brand new studio of Cliffhanger Games are the ones going to be fully developing this project, who were made specifically from the ground up just to make this game. Now, as I previously stated, is that there isn't a whole lot to go off of for the majority of some of these upcoming Marvel games, considering that they are all still pretty heavily within their development process. So, for the case of Black Panther, we do know that Cliffhanger Games are the ones developing it, while EA are the ones publishing it. And despite knowing that there are some big gaming people behind this project who have worked on other gaming projects within the industry, we don't really have a whole lot of details as to what the gameplay is going to look like, how the open world is going to act or react for playing as Black Panther, how combat or traversal might operate, what the story is going to be like, anything like that. It is still relatively hush-hush as it stands right now. But simply knowing that a Black Panther game, giving that character of huge importance his own title, and totally tailoring it to what a Black Panther experience could be in comparison to what we previously saw with Black Panther being playable within the Avengers game, and respectively all the other Avengers that were playable within that game, this is tailored specifically for one character and one character alone, that of which being Black Panther, and I definitely think that all the facets that we know about what this is right now could definitely lend for a very artistically flourishing Wakanda to have the player completely immerse themselves in. Now, the only slight kind of I feel towards this game is that we don't know this for sure, but there have been a lot of heavy rumors implying that the premise of this Black Panther game is that we are going to be playing as a Black Panther, which is taking up the role of the King of Wakanda after the passing of T'Challa. And I think we've seen this in a lot of other Black Panther-related media, sadly, since the passing of Chadwick Boseman, who was the live-action Black Panther in the MCU, and a lot of these other Black Panther projects don't seem to want to step on the toes of what Chadwick did with the character of T'Challa, when in reality, that kind of goes against the entire premise of being able to tell your own individual and unique stories with that exact same character instead of getting rid of that character entirely, which we will dive into in another upcoming Marvel game. But if we are pretty much going to be playing as a custom character Black Panther, which will end up making this game feel like an RPG of sorts, where you can kind of choose your own path and do what you want with your own individual Black Panther, it could lend for some interesting gameplay mechanics and storytelling options. But in terms of instead just doing T'Challa himself, seems a bit like wasted potential for the very first ever standalone Black Panther game. You feel like you would want to give that to T'Challa and his own experience rather than trying to make something that feels different but may not even end up feeling like Black Panther at all if it's not even the character who is the main Black Panther. So there's a lot of things I'm kind of skeptical towards about this one. I think the premise is cool, the developers sound very passionate about it, but I definitely need to hear and see more about this game when the time comes. But on the flip side of that is we're now moving on to number 4 on my list, with none other than Marvel's Blade, which is currently in development by Arcane Leon and published by Bethesda. Now, the biggest factor as to what makes Marvel's Blade a more different game compared to what we currently know about with Marvel's Black Panther is that the developer working on this Blade game has already proven themselves with some very interesting titles. The main one of which, of course, is Deathloop, which was Arcane Leon's big smash hit that released a few years ago. And despite Arcane as a studio being more focused on much more first-person immersive experiences like that of the Dishonored series and of course Deathloop, they have fully confirmed that Marvel's Blade will be a completely AAA, single-player, narrative-driven, third-person, action-adventure superhero game, with Blade as the main character, who of course is Eric Brooks and not any other type of insert character like what we seem to be hearing about the Black Panther game. This is in fact the one, the only vampire hunter himself. The Daywalker, Blade, is going to be the main character of this entire experience, and I think it sounds really cool. Now, there have been kind of inklings and implications that we could see this title being an Xbox exclusive, since Bethesda are the ones publishing this game, and Bethesda is a subsidiary company of Microsoft because Microsoft bought Bethesda. Meaning that this Blade game, just like Spider-Man and the Insomniac Spider-Man franchise, have been exclusive to PlayStation. It seems like Xbox is finally starting to dip their toes into the Marvel hemisphere for gaming, and they are starting off with Blade, which I think could be very, very interesting. I think Blade as a character has a lot of potential. A lot of his gameplay mechanics will be very interesting to dive into, with his vampire powers, his abilities, his swordsman skills, his gun skills. I think that there's a lot of flexibility there for Blade to thrive in, and seeing that this will be Arcane's first ever third-person game, or at least Arcane Leon's first ever third-person game, is going to be very intriguing to see how they will kind of switch gaming genres. We have seen a lot of great experiences from them in the past, but applying that to a Marvel character like Blade is a totally different ballpark. So it's going to be very intriguing to see how they handle this character, and especially how the narrative for Blade could turn out. There are a lot of interesting stories with Blade where he is teamed up with other Marvel characters, mainly if you have played Marvel's Midnight Suns. I think that is a fantastic Marvel game, which you should definitely play through if you're a fan of any and all types of Marvel characters. And of course, even in like a game with Spider-Man, friend or foe, you get to team up with Blade, fighting, villains and everything. So there is a lot of potential for Blade to carry his own experience, and the team over at Arcane Leon sound incredibly passionate about the character, and that's what you want to hear from these devs. So I, for one, am personally very much looking forward to it and what they could provide for this totally unique Blade experience. Which now brings us to the top dogs on my list with the final 3 slots available. Now, these are ones that I think a lot of people need to keep their eyes focused towards, because not only do I think that these will be huge landmark titles for Marvel games in general, but I definitely think that the creative freedom that each of these developers are going to be provided for all of these respective characters is not only going to provide some very cool gameplay mechanics and graphical capabilities and obviously visual fidelity with how they could handle these next-gen platforms, but of course the storytelling opportunities and where they, as creators, can take these characters in the future, especially in the form of an interactive entertainment medium like that of video games. Rather than just watching a movie with these characters like we have seen countless times in the MCU, how can you actually make these characters even more engaging within a video game? And I think that one is going to be the biggest example for the third game on my list, with that of Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra. Now, this game is being developed by Skydance New Media, who, if you are unaware, is actually, yet again, a totally brand new gaming studio made just for the sole purpose of making this game. Now, granted, they'll probably make more games eventually later on down the line, but they were originally formed to solely create this Marvel 1943 Captain America and Black Panther game set in World War II. Now, what's interesting about this is that we already know a couple of things about it. We do know that this is, yet again, being made in Unreal Engine 5. We saw the trailer for it. It looked absolutely visually stunning. The performances and all the characters and the acting looked incredibly lifelike and extremely detailed, and that is easily, up to date, I personally believe, to be the most visually impressive Marvel game we have ever seen. And, shockingly enough, it's actually set to release sometime next year in 2025. So we are pretty darn close to it coming out, and we have only just received a story trailer for it. Now, I am hoping that we will hear more about how exactly the gameplay will operate for this title, because if you have seen any of my previous videos about this game, which I highly suggest that you do, it is implied that Amy Hennig, who is leading the charge of this game, is taking some inspiration from, obviously, the Uncharted series, which she is known for since she was the main writer and creator of the original trilogy of Uncharted, but she also referenced other things like Detroit Become Human and other Quantic Dream games that were made in the past, like that of Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls. So I think that incorporating a more cinematic flair for gameplay and an Uncharted-style gameplay into one cohesive gaming experience with Captain America and Black Panther is definitely going to be very, very intriguing. And on top of that, we're not only just playing as Captain America and Black Panther, but this is actually what they have said is an ensemble of Marvel characters. We are going to be playing as Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, as well as Black Panther, who in this case in World War II is actually T'Challa's grandfather, Azuri, and 2 other non-superpowered characters with Gabriel Jones, who is a member of the Howling Commandos, and Nanali, who is a member of the Wakandan Spy Network. So we are going to be pretty much getting a dual protagonist story, with the main characters of Steve Rogers and Black Panther more than likely being at the forefront of this narrative, but at the same time, we have even more characters to immerse ourselves with Gabriel and Nanali being, I would think, more core characters to supporting the background of Captain America and Azuri's overall narrative into the story, how that's going to be occupying within France, Paris, of course, in World War II, and also Wakanda being the main settings of this game. So it's very, very interesting to see how this game is unfolding. Seeing the footage that we know of so far, it looks astounding, but we need to see what gameplay first and foremost looks like for this experience, and I'm hoping that it will be something that will just blow our socks off by the time we actually see it in action. Now, as we draw closer to the finish line, everybody, we are now moving on to number 2 on my list, which actually may surprise quite a lot of you. Now, I was actually going a bit back and forth as to whether or not I should put this game at number 1 or number 2, considering that not only do I thoroughly love the studio behind this game and how they have created previous games in the past, but in terms of what they can do with the character based on his overall power set. And while I am very much looking forward to what this game is going to be, there is one other game that I'm looking forward to more than that, which we will dive into later, that I just think has a lot more possibilities in terms of what the developers can do with giving fans the most definitive game possible featuring this character. But the same logic also applies with this game, especially how I, for one, am personally in love with all of their previous Marvel games, and I think that they are straight-up masterpieces. And in this case, we are talking about the one, the only, Weapon X himself, Marvel's Wolverine. Yes, Marvel's Wolverine is being made by Insomniac Games, the creators of all the incredible Marvel's Spider-Man games, from Spider-Man 1, Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2, and of course all the other incredible games they made in the past with Ratchet & Clank, Sunset Overdrive, Spyro the Dragon, Resistance, and much, much more. These games are a massive part of how I personally love to see these heroes handled within an interactive medium, mainly with that of Spider-Man, but also the gameplay, the stories, the graphics, the soundtracks, all elements that you want to see be totally beautifully realized within a game, Insomniac have delivered through and through, and I have no doubt that they're going to do the same exact thing with Logan in Marvel's Wolverine. Now, what I find interesting about Marvel's Wolverine is that we do know that this game is actually being created by the same team who made Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, where Brian Horton, who was the creative director of that project, is yet again going to be the creative director of Marvel's Wolverine, and we also know, seemingly, that it has been officially confirmed that both Marvel's Wolverine and all the Insomniac Spider-Man games do in fact take place within the same exact universe of Earth 1048, which I have totally been bamboozled by ever since they officially confirmed that, because hopefully that means that Insomniac is in fact creating their own fully unique Insomniac Marvel Games universe, with being tied exclusively to the PlayStation. But of course, what I mean by that is not only have we seen Easter eggs in Marvel Spider-Man with the Avengers, with Daredevil, Jessica Jones, all these other Marvel characters being incorporated within the wider world of Marvel's New York in that game, but we now know that there is more outside of New York, with Wolverine taking place in another part of the Marvel world, with that of Madripoor, and how he could potentially be utilizing his powers in different aspects of the Marvel world, getting his own unique story, and whether or not we could, hopefully one day, see Spider-Man and Wolverine interact in one way or another, either in Wolverine itself or maybe another Insomniac Marvel game down the line. But besides the Spider-Man connection, Wolverine is just an incredibly complex and layered character. He has tons and tons of narratives and stories to take through and look at and see what Insomniac could incorporate within his own unique story, and adding their own individual Insomniac twist to the narrative is going to be very interesting to see. But at the same time, it is going to be interesting to see how they handle a character like Wolverine and his powers in comparison to Spider-Man, and how his gameplay style and his characterization is very different from that of Peter Parker and obviously Miles Morales as well. So I definitely am very much looking forward to Wolverine's game. As a X-Men fan overall, I can't wait. I also am hoping that we get some ties to the wider world of the X-Men, possibly featured or referenced in some capacity in this game. I think it'd be very interesting. And seeing, hopefully, that this will not be an open world game, but rather a much more level-based and linear-centric game, like what we saw with Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, or even Marvel's Avengers, where you have certain hub worlds to look at, if only done better. I think that Wolverine could lend itself for traveling different parts of the Marvel world, and seeing how Logan could incorporate himself in those locations for where the story could take him. I'm very much looking forward to it, especially knowing it's, again, fully made exclusively on the PlayStation 5. They're going to take all the aspects and assets of that console and incorporate it into giving us, hopefully, the definitive Wolverine experience possible, and I, for one, cannot wait. And here we are, everybody, at the very end of the road. Is my #1 pick for the most anticipated Marvel game that I am personally very much looking forward to the most out of all these other titles. Now, again, I am excited for all of these, but this one is, without a doubt, the one I want to see more of right now, as soon as possible. I think this game has the potential to be a Game of the Year contender, especially considering the developers working on this project. Everything they've said about it so far has made me even more pumped for where they could take this character, what the story could be, how the gameplay could operate, and what the overall aesthetic could be for giving us a fully dedicated experience to this character that we haven't seen be shown on this high level of quality. And as you might have expected, I am talking about the one and only Armored Avenger himself, none other than Iron Man. So yes, Marvel's Iron Man game is currently in development by Motive Studios, and sadly is being published by Electronic Arts. Now, if you have been following my channel recently, you would have heard that we got some really odd news from EA, saying that they're thinking of incorporating in-game ads into all their upcoming AAA titles, which may or may not include Marvel's Iron Man and Marvel's Black Panther, since both those games are being published by EA themselves, which is a very big red flag as it stands right now. But besides that, you shouldn't look at either of those games, Black Panther or Iron Man, and thinking, oh, this game sucks just because it's being published by EA. That's not what you should be looking at. It's rather, these games are being published by EA, but they're being developed by completely different companies and studios. If it wasn't clear enough already, I am a massive Iron Man fan, and I definitely think that the possibility of where we saw Iron Man actually play like in the Avengers game was not entirely awful. I do think Crystal Dynamics did do some interesting jobs with the way on how he got around those hub areas, but also the way on how he flew and fought in certain combat scenarios was very interesting to see. But again, Avengers was a game which tried to have their cake and eat it too. They tried to do all this stuff with all these different Marvel characters who couldn't be more different from one another if they tried. Iron Man is nothing like Spider-Man, Black Panther is nothing like the Hulk, and so on and so forth. But you get the idea. All these characters have different elements and aspects tailored to their characters and also their gameplay mechanics. So, knowing that a character like Iron Man is going to be able to completely thrive in his own fully single-player, AAA, third-person, action-adventure, confirmed to be also open-world game, which is at the same time going to be running on Unreal Engine 5, that is insane. And I definitely think that there is a lot, and I do mean a lot, of possibility to get this right, but also possibly get this wrong. But everything that Motive have said so far about this game, which if you don't know, you should definitely watch my videos about it, sounds pitch perfect to me. Motive genuinely sounds like they want to give us not only the most definitive Iron Man experience, but also the most definitive Tony Stark experience. And I, as someone who loves the duality within these characters, Peter Parker Spider-Man, Miles Morales Spider-Man, even in the Marvel Spider-Man 2, Harry Osborn Venom, a lot of the balance that you get with the character in and out of the suit is what makes it an engaging thing to play through in the first place. And knowing that a character like Iron Man can do that 10 times over with how interesting of a character Tony Stark is before and after the accident in which he becomes Iron Man, but also how he kind of balances that charismatic nature, but also level of arrogance that he has, and what he can do, and how the player can immerse themselves in that world is beyond exciting for me personally. And knowing that they're going to give this the most amount of effort possible is, without a doubt, a dream for a diehard Iron Man fan like myself, and I cannot wait to see what this game is going to be like in action. But in the end, everybody, it's just an absolutely amazing time to be a fan of Marvel games. Whether you're a fan of Iron Man, Spider-Man, Black Panther, Captain America, Blade, any of these characters is easily going to give you a breath of fresh air within not only the world of gaming, but also for all these engaging Marvel heroes. Whether or not you're a fan of a character like Blade, maybe you've never even picked up a Blade comic book before, and same goes for Black Panther, Captain America, Iron Man, or whatever, the medium of gaming brings new people into experiencing these characters, potentially for the first time, but also in a massively interactive format with what gaming can provide. That's why I personally believe Spider-Man PS4 is not only the best superhero game of all time, but one of the best Peter Parker stories I've ever played through outside of the comics and ever seen in any form of media. It is easily, without a doubt, the best thing that you can do for a hero, and the best thing that you could do for the player to immerse themselves in that is to make you feel like you are that hero. So, doubling down on the interactive nature on what a video game can do, giving you a great story, amazing graphics, fun gameplay, that's all these people want, and the fact that we're going to be getting that for all these Marvel characters that I listed in this video, and more, is beyond a huge sign of awesomeness. I think this is a wonderful time to be a fan of superheroes, but especially for Marvel superheroes, and if you're a gamer like myself, we are living the dream, and I cannot wait to see even more footage be revealed for all these awesome gaming titles. But with all that said, everybody, that's the video I have for all you today, and please let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think about my list of the top 5 new upcoming Marvel games, which I think I am the most excited for the most, and what I think you should be excited for the most, given all the information that we know about them so far? Do you have a different list? Are you excited for a Marvel game that wasn't even featured on my list? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I'd love to hear what you think about the future of Marvel games. But with all that said, everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Stay merry, Marvelites. Until next time, peace out.